Chapter 771, I promise that I won't do anything. Mu Feiran smiled grimly. Mo Ding, you were clearly the one who started fooling around with Gu Jingze first. If you can reveal this to outsiders, do you think I can't reveal this too? Ha, DNA cannot be changed. You were already married to me when you gave birth to this child, but it's actually not mine. I, on the other hand, took no account of your transgression and didn't divorce you. But because you've stayed overseas all these years, Jingze was the only woman by my side. She was understanding of me and comforted me, so our feelings for each other grew. Now tell me, do you think they will believe your story, or does this story of mine seem more logical? Mu Feiran really regretted it. She regretted believing Mo Ding's words back then. However, there was no turning back. Right now, she just hoped that Union could return unharmed. She asked, what exactly do you want? That's my girl. Come back and earn money for me. I don't care about anything else. I don't care whose child it is or who exactly your lover is. Mu Feiran slowly lowered the phone. Darkness clouded her heart like a smog that would not go away. She could not see the end. Lin Che could not fall asleep for a long time because she was worried about Union. She only managed to put Gu Jingze to sleep after many difficulties. If not for her, Nianian would not want to sleep at all. He would want to wait for news from Gu Jingze. Lin Che went to the guest room only when Nianian had fallen asleep. After sitting down, she leaned against the couch and thought of Mu Feiran all alone in Seattle. She was definitely very upset and very worried. Lin Che herself was sitting there waiting for Gu Jingze to return. While waiting, she eventually fell asleep on the couch. By the time Gu Jingze returned home, it was already the wee hours of the morning. When he saw the woman curled up on the couch, he quietly walked towards her and gestured for everyone else to retire to their rooms. He gazed at Lin Che's contorted face. He walked towards her, gently removed his coat, and placed it over her. Then, he sat beside her and stroked her head. Lin Che woke up immediately. She looked up and saw Gu Jingze through bleary eyes. You're back. She rubbed her eyes and sat up, sensing a pleasant scent on her body. She looked down and noticed then that his coat was covering her. Gu Jingze said, don't move. Leave it. The night breeze is chilly. Be careful not to catch a cold. He reached his hands out to pull the coat over her properly and proceeded to hug her in one swift motion. Hey, you. Don't move. Listen to me, Gu Jingze said sternly, about Mu Feiran. Huh. As expected, Lin Che obediently stopped moving upon hearing Mu Feiran's name. Gu Jingze said, I've already investigated it. Mo Ding has indeed just returned to the country. But we're still not sure where he has hidden the child. Do you know if he is close to anyone in the country? Lin Che pondered for a bit. The only thing I know is that he's together with Gu Jingze, Mu Feiran's assistant back then. The two of them were deceiving Mu Feiran the entire time. It seems that they're still together now. Gu Jingze mumbled this name and nodded with his brow severely furrowed. Gu Jingze said, all right. Let's rest up first. Many more things will happen tomorrow. Lin Che looked at him. Union will be fine, right? Gu Jingze nodded. Didn't you analyze the situation in a very logical manner earlier in the day? Why are you asking again now? Lin Che's embarrassment was plain on her face. Earlier in the day, it was because I was consoling her, so of course, I was being more thoughtful of her. That person Mo Ding is such a perverse human being. Who knows if he will treat Union well just because she's still a child. I'm worried that she will suffer from abuse. I watched Union grow up. She's just like my own child. I don't want to see her get hurt even a little. Gu Jingze squinted his eyes at her for a long time before smiling. He lifted her up in one swift motion. All right, I guarantee that the child won't be hurt at all, okay? We should go in and sleep. Lin Che was lifted off the ground all of a sudden. Hey, what are you doing? Taking you to rest. Stop it, I can walk on my own. I know. He lowered his head and rubbed his cheek against hers. But I want to carry you. Lin Che's face heated up immediately. She felt an itch when he rubbed his cheek against hers. He carried her with his strong body and brought her to the bedroom in no time. He placed Lin Che on the bed. She was about to move when Gu Jingze pressed her down. Oh, what are you doing? Lin Che frowned. The lights in the room were turned off aside for some floor lights. She could see his beautiful eyes gazing at her and smiling. Lin Che froze. She felt Gu Jingze wind his arms around her in a domineering manner. Then, he laid down on the bed with her. Lin Che moved her legs. Get off me, quick. Otherwise, I'll kick you off the bed. Don't move. I promise not to touch you at all. Let's just sleep like this. He pressed his lips to her ear. However, his teeth suddenly grazed her earlobe and he pulled her earlobe with his lips. But if you move, I don't mind moving along with you either. She did not want to move. Lin Che's earlobe went numb under his ministrations. Her earlobe was the most sensitive part of her body. The moment he touched it, her whole body turned weak. With her legs closed, she felt his arm sling across her. He hugged her like this and closed his eyes. Lin Che was truly speechless. Using the excuse of helping her out, Gu Jingze had simply invaded her bed. He was really becoming more and more shameless. He was more shameless than he had been years ago. Lin Che did not know how much time had passed before she eventually fell asleep to his familiar scent. The next day, Mu Feiren suddenly called her early in the morning. Lin Che picked her phone up in a daze and placed it near her ear. Feiren, what happened? Lin Che, I'm already at the B City airport. What? Mu Feiren had actually returned yesterday night. Lin Che hastily said, all right. I'll go and meet you. When Lin Che sat up, she suddenly felt something weighing on her body. She looked down only to see Gu Jingze with his clothes disheveled. He had not taken off his shirt but all the buttons had already loosened and the shirt hung loosely on his frame. The exposed skin on his chest made her drool. Down below, his pants had already fallen to reveal the prominent V-line of his hip. Lin Che stared at Gu Jingze and felt that her eyes were about to freeze in that position. What had happened? The two of them had clearly been fine when they fell asleep last night. They had definitely been dressed when they fell asleep. Why were their clothes so disheveled right now? She looked at him as the sunlight shone on his body, bathing him in a layer of beautiful light. It made her feel that his body was just like a perfect sculpture. When he woke up, he quietly opened his eyes blearily. He was in a slight daze as he gazed at her lazily. What happened? Chapter 772, Mu Feiren returned to the country. When he woke up, he quietly opened his eyes blearily. He was in a slight daze as he gazed at her lazily. What happened? Lin Che froze and quickly swallowed her drool. She hastily turned her head away to avoid him and pretended that she had not been looking at him. What happened? Your clothes. Gu Jingze asked. You still have the gall to ask me. How was I to know that your arms and legs can't stay still? You kept touching me randomly even in your sleep. He leaned in close and said gently into her ear, if not for the fact that you seemed very tired, I definitely would have pushed you down and taught you a lesson last night so that you would not kick up a fuss for no reason. Lin Che was too embarrassed to be seen. So this attire of his was all her doing. Lin Che had always moved around in her sleep. Even Nianian did not like sleeping together with her. Therefore, it was entirely plausible that she had done as he said. She turned away sheepishly. Well, by the way, Feiren is here. I have to go and pick her up. Lin Che hastily jumped off the bed and rushed to wash up. Behind her, Gu Jingze smiled. He slowly tidied his appearance and followed her downstairs. When Lin Che was done washing up, Nianian had awoken as well. She packed up while telling Nianian, stay at home obediently once you're done eating. I'm going to fetch Auntie Feiren. I'll come back soon. Gu Jingze passed her coat to her. Don't worry, I'll get someone to watch him. Lin Che looked up, took her coat from him, and put it on. Okay, are you going to the company today? Gu Jingze replied, I'm coming with you. The hand that Lin Che was using to put her coat on froze. What, you're coming with me for what? I'm going to fetch Feiren. Since I have to help you settle this matter today, of course, I have to be present to understand the situation. Don't you think so? Lin Che thought that he made sense. She could only glare at him and agree. Gu Jingze said, come on. Your shoes. Okay. Lin Che slipped on a pair of white sneakers and crouched down to tie her laces. The end result was quite ugly since she was in a rush. Gu Jingze instinctively frowned. Look at you, how clumsy, let me do it. As he spoke, he immediately crouched down and started tying her shoes. Lin Che stopped moving and watched him untie her laces in concentration before gently tying it into a beautiful butterfly bow. She could not help but smile, thinking to herself that he was a real nitpicker who was very attentive to detail. Behind them, Gu Xinian looked at them with his hand on his forehead and rolled his eyes. How could they take it so far as to torment their own son? The two of them walked out together after tidying up. Gu Jingze was in charge of driving. They did not bring the driver along as they were going to pick Mu Feiren up and wanted to prevent the car from getting too cramped. They arrived at the airport in no time. Mu Feiren was wearing a large pair of shades while sitting in the airport cafe. She took a sip of her coffee and looked outside. She had always kept a low profile and had not returned to C Nation for a long time. Although not much had changed in reality, for some reason, she was in a despondent mood as she looked around. It was here that she had previously attained many things and lost many things as well. She had already let go and did not want to come back. However, she had no choice but to set foot on this piece of land. She looked at the time and heard Lin Che shouting from a distance, "Feiren." She turned around only to see Lin Che running towards her. She quickly stood up but saw that Gu Jingze was also walking leisurely behind Lin Che. She paused involuntarily. Then, she bowed her head while looking at Gu Jingze and said, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Gu." Gu Jingze let out a sound of affirmation. Lin Che turned around and looked at him before turning back only to see Mu Feiren's bewildered expression. Lin Che did not know how to explain it to her either. She placed her arm around Mu Feiren's shoulders and asked, "Why did you come back all of a sudden?" Mu Feiren still felt unwell now that she was here. She was extremely worried and felt much weaker. "That bastard, Mo Ding, suddenly called me. I thought that I had to come back no matter what. Even if I find Union, I must personally bring her back. So I decided to just buy a ticket and come back here." Just then, Gu Jingze said from behind them, "I've already asked a friend of mine to help you out. He has connections everywhere in the underground and in regular society. It will be quite easy for him to look for someone." Mu Feiren looked at him gratefully. "Thank you, I'm truly grateful." "It's nothing. Thank you for looking after Lin Che on my behalf all these years. It's only right that I do this." Mu Feiren smiled. She leaned in close to Lin Che and said, "You can't really say that we took care of each other, but we did feel much happier because we kept each other company while we brought up our children abroad together. So I should thank Lin Che too." Lin Che smiled and said, "All right. Let's stop saying thank you in turns. We're such close friends. There's nothing to thank each other for." Nianian has been feeling terribly anxious back at home ever since he heard about Union's disappearance. Lin Che pulled Mu Feiren to her. The two of them walked in front while Gu Jingze trailed after them. Whenever the three of them walked past, the people around them would glance at them curiously. After all, it was refreshing to see handsome men and beautiful women. However, there were not many people who knew exactly who Mu Feiren and Lin Che were. After all, they had left for a very long time. Many people did not instantly remember them and no paparazzi was stalking them. Thus, people all the more did not think that these two beautiful women were celebrities or something of that sort. With Lin Che's arm around her, Mu Feiren looked at Lin Che and said, "Wow. Gu Jingze came personally to pick me up. Is it an honor?" Lin Che glared at her and scoffed, "To hell with you. With his help, things seem to be much easier to resolve. But I'm a little worried about Union. I really have to thank you. If not for you, there's no way that someone like Gu Jingze would help me out." "You're doing it again. I've already told you that it's only right for us to assist you in this matter. There's no need to thank us. Of course, I don't have to stand on ceremony with you. There's no such thing between us. But it's different with Gu Jingze. He's only helping me because of you, so I must thank him." Lin Che said, "The most important thing at the moment is Union's safety." Gu Jingze drove while Lin Che and Mu Feiren sat in the back. They arrived home very soon after. Mu Feiren looked around and asked in confusion, "Why aren't you staying in the Gu residence?" She had been to the Gu residence the last time and knew that it was definitely different from this place. Lin Che said, "Hey. This is my estate. It's my house. Ah, really? Lin Che scratched her head. Even though the money was from Gu Jingze. Mu Feiren grinned even wider. I see. Gu Jingze is so generous towards you. This place looks very big. Mu Feiren looked at Lin Che before thinking about her own situation. A person's fate could really change because she met the right person. But she could also regret the rest of her life because she met the wrong person. Chapter 773. She must still come back and earn money for me. The moment Gu Xinian saw Mu Feiren, he immediately ran out. Auntie Feiren, you're here. Mu Feiren thought of Union when she saw Nianian. The two of them were always together, but now, she did not know where Union had gone. She hugged Nianian and nearly cried. Gu Xinian slipped his small hand into hers and said, Auntie Feiren, do not worry. Father will definitely help us find Union. Mu Feiren nodded vigorously. Smiling, she looked up and said, how embarrassing. Even a child has to console me now. In reality, she had nothing to be ashamed of. Everyone could understand how she felt. How could they remain calm if their own child had disappeared? No matter how good they were at hiding it on the outside, they were probably anxious to the extreme on the inside. Gu Jingze watched from the side and said, I got someone's help earlier. I think the results would have come out by now. Wait a moment. All right, thank you, Mr. Gu. Seeing that Gu Jingze was leaving, Lin Che quickly caught up with him. You asked someone for help. That's right. Gu Jingze held his phone up, smiled, and said, I'll make a call and ask. Lin Che nodded and watched as he dialed a number. His call got through in no time. He smiled and said, I'm still calling about that matter. How's it going? The voice on the phone was low and stuffy. Lin Che wondered if she had heard it wrongly. For some reason, she felt that she had heard this voice somewhere before. I've already found the child. Right now, I'm figuring out how to get there. Hey, you still haven't told me what exactly you'll give me in return. As you know, I've always been slow to act if there are no benefits. I believe that you won't want anything from me after you see the child. Ha, do you think I'm such a kind person? We'll know when the time comes. Make your way over now. I'll send my people there immediately. I can only tell you that by helping me out with this, you're helping yourself as well. You won't regret it. There was a moment of silence on the other hand. Although Gu Jingze had spoken too vaguely on the matter, he still chose to trust him in the end. All right, I'll send you the address. Hearing that he had hung up, Lin Che leaned towards him and asked, what happened? Who was that? His voice sounds strange. Gu Jingze looked at her and said, this person is a new merchant in C Nation. His name is Mo Jinyan and he works for both good and bad causes. He's a pretty good partner to work with. Ah, I haven't heard of him. But the strange this is that I found his voice a little familiar, Lin Che said. Gu Jingze smiled meaningfully. You didn't hear wrongly. You've met him and heard his voice before. What? He smiled and said, he still has another name. What's his name? Black Hawk. Of course, Lin Che knew who he was. She would never forget how Black Hawk had taken her hostage with Li Mingyu, lured Gu Jingze to a nation, and made them suffer such torture. Lin Che asked in surprise, why him? Are you working with him? Gu Jingze said, there's no such thing as forever friends in the business world. The same goes for perpetual enemies. He had malicious intentions against the Gu family. I used this to deal with my grandfather and gained an edge from it. I also helped him attain a proper identity in C Nation to do business. Even though we have a mutually beneficial relationship, it's fine to help each other out when there's a need for it. As for this matter, it's much faster for him to do it than it is for me to do it. After all, he has connections everywhere. He can find anyone no matter where they are. Hearing this, Lin Che felt that there was no harm in using someone like that to save Union as soon as possible. However, she was worried that Black Hawk was not a good Samaritan. But don't have too much contact with him, alright? I'm worried. Gu Jingze held her hand and said calmly, don't worry. We won't turn on each other as long as our interests are aligned. When there are no more gains, it's fine for us to become enemies. Besides, we were enemies in the past anyway, right? He seemed to make sense. But earlier, you said that this is advantageous for him. What does this have to do with him? About that you'll know in the future. Isn't it great that he said he could help us find the child? Lin Che knew that Gu Jingze had his own reasons for whatever plan he had. Lin Che's mind could not follow and she definitely would not understand. Whether it was in the past or now, Lin Che realized that she had actually always trusted Gu Jingze. Lin Che looked at Gu Jingze and nodded. She said to him, "In that case, I'll wait for your good news." Gu Jingze patted the back of her hand quietly. "Don't worry." As he watched Lin Che go in, he thought to himself that there was one thing he had not told Lin Che. The relationship between Black Hawk and Mu Feiren. This could be considered a huge present that Gu Jingze was giving to Black Hawk. He was going to let him see his biological daughter. He wondered what Black Hawk would think if he knew that he had a daughter. Perhaps this cold man would still feel nothing, or maybe he would be willing to acknowledge this daughter of his. No one knew whether this was good or bad for his daughter and Mu Feiren. At the hospital, Mo Ding had just come out from inside. With a cigarette in his mouth, he finally saw Mu Feiren's number on his phone screen and laughed softly. The night before, Mu Feiren's phone was off when he repeatedly tried to call her. He knew from this alone that Mu Feiren was probably on the plane. It seemed that he had been right. "Feiren, what's your decision?" "Mo Ding, I'm back in C Nation. I want to see my daughter. Take me to see my daughter first. Whether or not you can meet your daughter depends on your sincerity. Come over and sign a contract with me. I'll return your daughter to you immediately." No, I will give our daughter a warm family immediately." What do you mean? Sign a contract? Are you trying to force me to continue being your slave?" "What slave? You're the queen of the industry. Right now, there's still no one who can surpass your level back then. It will definitely be effortless for you to make a comeback and earn as much money as you want. When the time comes, we'll be known as a couple. Then, living under the camera lens of the paparazzi, I will definitely treat you particularly well. The same goes for our daughter. You Mo Ding, you're the one who should be an actor. In front of you, I'm so ashamed," Mu Feiren said coldly. Mo Ding laughed out loud. "You don't have a choice, Mu Feiren. You make a choice between being a celebrity admired by millions or an adulterous woman spit on by millions. I would choose the former if I were you." Mo Ding put down the phone. Beside him, Gu Jingze, who had come over, asked instinctively, "Why? Is Mu Feiren really back?" Mo Ding scoffed. "Do you even need to ask? I told you a long time ago that she would still have to obey me and come back to earn money for me." Chapter 774, Where exactly is the child? Gu Jingze leaned into Mo Ding's embrace immediately. "But the fact that the two of you will be married in the future makes me very upset. What should I do?" Mo Ding looked down and caressed her face. Then, he squeezed her gigantic breasts, causing her to yell coquettishly. She shouted, "You bad boy. What are you doing?" Mo Ding said, "Don't worry. Even if we're married, I will only sleep in your room when the time comes." His expression hardened. "Who wants to sleep with a torn shoe? Humph. I don't know how many men have toyed around with her, but she's still pretending to be so pure. I wouldn't touch a woman like that even if you told me to." Mo Ding still felt furious when he thought about it. He did not touch her on their wedding night. Thereafter, the two of them kept getting into arguments. But one day, someone suddenly told him that he was about to become a father. Someone had taken a photograph of Mu Feiren going to the hospital to see a gynecologist. It seemed that she was pregnant. Back then, he wondered where the child had come from when he had not touched this woman at all. He knew that many women in the entertainment industry were like this. They pretended to be pure virgins but slept with countless men in secret. However, Mu Feiren had always been very lofty. Could it be that she had messed around with another man without his knowledge? He was so furious that he immediately confronted Mu Feiren back then, but Mu Feiren merely wept melancholically and did not say anything. Mo Ding felt that he had truly been deceived. He also found it fortunate that he had never touched her. Otherwise, he would have felt filthy. The two of them walked out of the hotel. Ever since Mo Ding's company had lost Mu Feiren, he had no other celebrity worth promoting at all. Thus, profits were decreasing day by day. This time, he had gone out especially to do some networking. In the hotel's cafe, he He had just sat down with Gu Jingze when he saw a tall and sturdy man with a fearsome expression on his face. Although he was smiling, for some reason his smile seemed very cold. He walked towards them slowly, causing Gu Jingze to widen her eyes as she looked at him from the side. She hit Mo Ding hard and asked, "Who is that person?" Mo Ding looked up, frowned and said, "I don't know him." "Why?" "It's nothing. He came in and looked at us, so I thought he's someone you know." "Why, could it be that you don't know him?" "Of course I don't." "What a shame. This person looks extremely rich. Quick, look at the watch he's wearing and even the car keys he's holding. I thought he was the person you were going to meet today." Mo Ding had noticed this as well. But it was true that he did not know this man. Nor had he seen this man anywhere. But after Gu Jingze finished speaking, Mo Ding realized that this man was currently walking towards him. Furthermore, it looked as if he was indeed approaching him. Mo Ding instinctively felt a little nervous. As he watched the man move closer to him, he looked up a little uneasily and wanted to stand up. However, the man stepped right in front of him and asked all of a sudden, "Are you Mo Ding?" He stood tall and towered above as he looked down at Mo Ding. He casually whipped out a cigarette case from his pocket and bounced it with practiced ease. A cigarette came out and he placed it into his mouth with one of his eyes narrowed. He lit the cigarette and looked down amidst the smoke to tell Mo Ding, "I want to enlist your help in a matter." The way he lit up the cigarette revealed his dark aura immediately. His strong gloomy presence and his careless disdain for others immediately put Mo Ding under a lot of pressure. Mo Ding merely looked at him and asked, "Who are you?" The man replied, "There's this child. I'm wondering if you've locked her up. I want to see her now. Could you hand her over to me?" Mo Ding's heart quaked and he immediately understood. He was here to ask for Mu Feiren's child. Mo Ding wondered what he meant. By coming here and asking him for Mu Feiren's child, what was his relationship with Mu Feiren? Or how was he related to Lin Che? Mo Ding did not know how Lin Che had such good connections. There were so many bodyguards around her. Each time he went over, they did not allow him to get close at all. He suspected that the person in front of him was related to Lin Che. Lin Che was truly a large obstacle in his plan. Mo Ding immediately said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I merely took my daughter home. My relationship with my daughter has nothing to do with others." However, just when Mo Ding had finished speaking, the man immediately pulled him up by the collar roughly. He moved in dangerously close to Mo Ding, smoke clouding Mo Ding's vision. It seemed that his face was going to touch Mo Ding's at any time. Then, he said, "I'll ask you again. Where is the child? I don't care who she is. I want her to appear in front of me right now. If you comply and take me to her, then we don't have to pursue this any further. If you don't take me to her, then I'll force you to make the decision on your own." You where did you come from? How dare you treat me like this? Be careful, I'll call the police." "Sure, you're refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." Mo Jinyan lifted him off the ground immediately and pulled his body across the table. Then, he fell onto the ground with a whoosh. The cafe immediately fell into chaos. Gu Jingze started shouting from behind. Mo Ding had fallen on the floor in a daze. He crawled up with much difficulty and looked up at the man's unchanging expression. "You." However, everyone rushed out of the cafe. Gu Jingze looked up only to see the place filled with people oppressively standing around them. Although they were each dressed differently, all of them were men. It looked like a scene from a movie. Only then did they understand that they had provoked someone they should not have provoked. Mo Ding still insisted, "I don't know what you're talking about. What child? I don't know." However, Mo Jinyan immediately threw a photograph on his face. "This is a photo taken by my henchman. You locked the child up in this motel. Bring me to the room where she is. Otherwise, I'll take you there. But I don't know if you'll bring along your fingers, or your arm, or your lower limbs, or your little brother." Mo Ding was so frightened that he was soaked in cold sweat under Mo Jinyan's control. He had deliberately found a very special place to lock the child up as he was worried about Lin Che's interference. That place was a motel that did not require one's identity for registration. It was known to be a place for questionable people to take shelter. Crooks mixed in with the honest folk here. The motel had tens of rooms that were narrow and dirty. However, it was advantageous for its safety because no one would know exactly which room the person they were looking for was in. The motel owner would definitely not reveal such information. Either you went looking or you gave up. He did not expect the man in front of him now to take a different route and directly force him to bring him there. Of course, he was unwilling to do it. But when he saw the cigarette butt in the man's hand flick towards his body, he could not help but think about what would happen if the cigarette butt was a knife. Chapter 775, Whose child is this? He probably dared to use a knife on him for real. Mo Ding had no choice but to say, I'll tell you. I'll tell you, all right. This time, Mo Jinyan nodded his head in satisfaction. Mo Ding had initially thought of finding a chance to run away immediately after leaving this place, but Mo Jinyan immediately called his men on him. They crossed the street in lines and did not even fear the policemen. Just like that, they headed towards the motel. There was nothing Mo Ding could do but take them to the room. Inside, a middle-aged woman went to open the door. She was immediately frightened by the formation outside. Thereafter, the little girl suddenly appeared. Mo Jinyan walked in. With one glance, he saw the little girl sitting inside. She was dressed in a white dress and looked up at him obediently. His heart suddenly jolted. Strangely, he felt that this child was very pitiful. Then, he felt that this child was very adorable. He approached her and crouched down to look at her. It's all right, you're safe now. Union looked up at him. Who are you? I'm here to take you to your mother. Come on, are you coming? Really, I miss mother so much, but they said that she's still busy at work, Union said. Mo Jinyan stroked her slightly brown hair. I'll take you to your mother right now. He carried Union, stepped past Mo Ding completely, and walked out. Mo Ding gritted his teeth but could not retaliate at all because his entire body was being held down. Who exactly was this man? How could he be so overbearing? When did Mu Feiren actually become acquainted with a top dog like him? The fact that Mo Ding's plan did not succeed made him furious at the moment. He thought to himself that he would definitely have an opportunity next time. No matter who Mu Feiren had an affair with, she was still his lawfully wedded wife. Mo Jinyan kept looking at the child. Union looked outside obediently. Her pretty face was chubby and genuinely made him want to pinch her cheeks. Perhaps she made him feel tenderness because she was so sensible. Although Mo Jinyan was not good with words and did not like to interact with children either, he could not help but look down at her and ask, is there anything you want to eat? Did you suffer for the past few days? Union looked up and shook her head. I must be obedient. Mother is at work. I must listen to her. Mo Jinyan instinctively felt uneasy. He himself found it strange that he was feeling this way. He looked outside and said, stop for a moment. The driver stopped the car and he immediately tossed his wallet to him. Go and buy some snacks that children like. The driver froze. He did not dare to say another word and quickly left to buy quite a lot of snacks. It did not take long for him to bring the snacks into the car. Mo Jinyan looked at the child. Look inside and eat whatever you want to. Can I really do that? Thank you, uncle. The smile that appeared on Union's face made her look like an angel. Mo Jinyan's heart warmed immediately and he instinctively stretched out his hand to caress her head. Good girl. The driver watched from in front and felt that his brain was going to short circuit. To think that their boss would actually treat a child so well. He could not tell that their boss was actually so kind-hearted. If talk of Black Hawk acting kind-hearted spread in their circle, most people were going to vomit from disgust. At Lin Che's residence. After taking a call, Gu Jingze came in and said, the child is here. Mu Feiren and Lin Che were sitting in the living room and waiting restlessly when they immediately stood up together. Beside them, Gu Xinian stood up slowly as well. Just then, they heard the sound of a car stopping outside. Gu Jingze glanced at Mu Feiren. He saw Mu Feiren walk out frantically and stopped Lin Che from following her. Let the mother have some time with her child, he said. Hearing this, Lin Che thought that he was right. She looked at Gu Jingze and felt that he was as attentive as always. He could even think of such a small detail. On the outside, Mu Feiren immediately saw a man carrying Union. She threw all caution to the wind and ran out directly. She had been worried for so many days and finally saw Union safe and sound today. She shouted agitatedly, Union, Union. Mother is here, quote. Union also called out to Mu Feiren while in Mo Jinyan's arms, Mother, Mother. Mu Feiren ran to Union and took her into her arms in one swift motion. With her face pressed against Union's face, she was nearly about to cry. Over the past few days, she had really been in a living hell. But as long as Union was fine, everything she had to go through was worth it. It was only after embracing Union for a long time that she remembered there was still someone in front of her. She slowly lifted her head. Thank you. She was just about to say, thank you for helping me. However, the man before her was all sharp angles and hard corners. His gaze was deep and his lashes were like the plume of a black phoenix that covered his dark eyes. When he looked at her, she felt as if her soul was being bared to him without reservation. His evil and seductive eyes caused her heart to jolt. Mu Feiren's body froze, especially when she felt that familiar nightmare appear before her all of a sudden. The man in front of her looked very similar to the man who had raped her on her wedding night. However, she had not seen clearly what exactly the man looked like. Many years had already passed by now, so her memories were even hazier. But when he suddenly came close, that feeling evoked those memories immediately. She instinctively looked up at the man before her and subconsciously wanted to run away. However, Mo Jinyan's eyes were already fixed on her beautiful face. She did not remember him, but he would never forget her. Because back then, he had momentarily lost control of himself and captured a woman from the corridor into his room. Now that he thought about it, it had not occurred to him then that his actions had been so dangerous. Fortunately, nothing had happened at all. Over the past few years, he felt as if he would never see the woman from that night ever again. However. Wait a minute, was this child hers? Mo Jinyan looked inside. Gu Jingze was standing at the door and gazing at him with a meaningful smile. When their eyes met, Mo Jinyan instantly remembered Gu Jingze's earlier words. Those words along the lines of, you will not regret doing this, helping me is also helping yourself. This child. This child. Mo Jinyan's eyes widened as he looked at the child in Mu Feiren's arms. When he looked closely at the child, she did, in fact, look very much like Mu Feiren. However, some of her features did not look like Mu Feiren's. For instance, her slightly brown hair, her earlobes, her neck and the way her small hands were shaped. After sensing something amiss, the more he looked at her, the more he felt that she looked like him. However, just then, Mu Feiren had gathered her senses once again and looked at Mo Jinyan. Thank you for bringing Union back. Mo Jinyan's head jolted as if he had just regained his bearings. He looked at the back of the child's head and said, no problem. By the way, how old is the child? Chapter 776. Don't mention other men in front of me. Mu Feiren froze. The child is 3.5 years old. She's only 15 days younger than Nianian. Both of them are 3.5. 3.5 years. Mo Jinyan's gaze seemed to become unfocused. He looked in front and secretly calculated the time. It was just right. He smiled and looked at Union. It's good that the child is fine. Union, now that I've brought you to your mother, shouldn't you say thank you to me? Union turned around, happily wound her arms around Mo Jinyan's neck, and pecked his cheek. Thank you, uncle. Just call me Uncle Mo. He smiled at her and said gently. After being kissed, Mo Jinyan felt even more like he was floating. Mu Feiren looked at him in surprise. She thought that this person looked very scary and did not expect him to treat children so well. It seemed that he really liked children. Mu Feiren smiled even more gratefully. Thank you. Mo Jinyan looked at Mu Feiren. If you really want to thank me, you can ask Gu Jingze to treat me to a meal. After all, he's the one who asked for my help. By the way, your number. He took his phone out and handed it to her, meaning to ask her to put in her number. Mu Feiren froze. She did not understand why he suddenly asked for her number. Mo Jinyan said, there are some remaining issues regarding the man who took the child away. I'll let you know about it later. The child is here right now, so it's not convenient for me to tell you. Hearing this, Mu Feiren then nodded in understanding. She took his phone and entered her number. Mo Jinyan gazed at her deeply before raising his head to look at Gu Jingze. He looked askance at the exit, hinting to Gu Jingze to go out and talk. Outside. The cigarette in Mo Jinyan's hand was already burned halfway. But the cigarette ash had not been flicked off yet. Gu Jingze came up behind him. What's up? Mo Jinyan turned around. Gu Jingze, you knew about it a long time ago but you only told me now. What do you mean? Are you trying to use this to threaten me? I'm telling you, even if the child is mine, I don't have much an attachment to her. It's impossible to control me by using the child to threaten me and by letting her become my weakness. Gu Jingze waited quietly for him to finish before looking at him and saying, Black Hawk, get this straight. I told you out of goodwill. Threatening you, making her become your weakness. In that case, I could have totally withheld the information from you and gradually become the benefactor of Mu Feiren and your daughter. I could have made them trust me and when the time came I could have shown you the child then. I merely let it happen naturally because of the timing. Mo Jinyan held the railing with one hand. He looked down at the pond downstairs with his head hanging. Gu Jingze walked towards him and patted him on the shoulder. Alright, I've already told you what I should tell you. Now, Mu Feiren is still Mo Ding's wife in name. But from what I know, they have never stayed in the same room. However, Mo Ding has constantly tried to use your daughter to blackmail Mu Feiren into earning money for him. Mo Jinyan recalled the man he had seen earlier in the day. He still wanted to be Yunyan's father. Had he known earlier he should have chopped off those 2 arms of his back then. Gu Jingze went back in soon after. Seeing that he had finally ended his discussion with Black Hawk, Lin Che quickly made her way to him. What happened? Nothing. He patted Lin Che's hand. Just then, Black Hawk walked in as well. He smiled upon seeing Lin Che. Hello, Miss Lin, we meet again. Lin Che crossed her arms. That's right, fate is such a fascinating thing. I really hoped that I wouldn't see you for the rest of my life, but who knew? Black Hawk laughed out loud. By the way, Li Mingyu has gone to M Nation. I saw him a while back and he even asked me if I had any news of you. It seems like you've constantly been on his mind. Lin Che's face darkened. Gu Jingze's expression turned dull before he glared fiercely at Black Hawk from the side. Black Hawk looked at Gu Jingze in satisfaction as if he was feeling slightly more comfortable. Then, he reached out his hand and shook hands with Lin Che. Just call me Mo Jinyan. It's nice to meet you. It seems like we'll have to meet often in the future. There was another layer of meaning to his words. He looked past Lin Che and at Mu Feiren inside. Lin Che crossed her arms. I really don't want to. But she still shook hands with Black Hawk. This was better than continuing to be enemies. He quirked his lips up at Lin Che, appearing even eviler. I find it quite amazing, but we will have to interact more with one another in the future. I think we're quite well suited to be friends. Gu Jingze caught Black Hawk's hand and pushed it back to him. That's enough. There's no need for you to be friends with other people's wives. Black Hawk looked at Gu Jingze in disbelief. This man was so petty when it came to women. But Lin Che looked so enviable. It was no wonder that he was always worried that someone would take her away. Although he did not feel much towards her, he knew from the fact that Li Mingyu was unable to forget her after interacting with her for a mere few days that she probably had her special qualities. Soon after, Black Hawk left while smiling. After he left, Mu Feiren brought Yunyan into the room and coaxed her to sleep. Lin Che looked at Gu Jingze. This person doesn't look that evil now. Gu Jingze looked at her skeptically. How silly. This personality of yours, you would think that anyone is a good person after spending some time with them. No way. I just think that he probably has his own reasons even if he's evil. No one is evil for no reason. Perhaps he has been through things that we don't even know about. Gu Jingze's face darkened considerably. He pulled Lin Che by the shoulder and looked into her eyes threateningly. You're not allowed to think about other men in front of your husband. Lin Che pushed his hand away and said, how mean. Why are you pulling me? Look at me and tell me that you won't. He tugged at her again and forced her to look into his eyes. It was as if he would not let go of her if she did not say it. Lin Che looked at him speechlessly. Left with no choice, she could only say with her face blushing slightly, yes, yes, yes. I won't. Let go of me quickly. Mu Feiren was still around. It was so embarrassing for him to pester her like this. However, Gu Jingze smiled in satisfaction upon hearing this. He put his arms around her shoulders and pulled her into his embrace. Then, he started to kiss her gently. Lin Che's eyes widened. She was about to resist when she felt his lips press down on hers. His breath was slightly minty and felt very fresh. His thin lips surrounded her lips gently and left behind a moist trail. They also left behind his elegance, making her feel extremely comfortable. Lin Che closed her eyes slowly and felt Gu Jingze still faintly licking her lips as if he was savoring a delicious pudding. Thereafter, he pried her lips open and explored her mouth little by little. The two figures slowly intertwined. Just then, Lin Che, Union has fallen asleep. Mu Feiren pulled the door open and walked out only to see Lin Che and Gu Jingze. She froze before quickly turning her head away. Chapter 777, Take Mu Wanqing there for a look. Lin Che hastily pushed Gu Jingze away with frantic eyes. However, Gu Jingze merely wiped his mouth calmly and reached his hand out to wipe the moisture from her mouth as well. Then, he smiled, patted her shoulder and said, "All right. I'll go and deal with work matters first. We'll continue this again when I come back." Lin Che glared at him crossly and quickly schooled her face into a neutral expression. She turned around and smiled sheepishly at Mu Feiren whose back was facing her. "Feiren, what's up?" Upon hearing her speak, Mu Feiren covered her mouth, suppressed a smile, and turned around. "Hey, the two of you. Even if you want to be affectionate, choose the right place, all right? You're making this lonely person so anxious." With a blushing face, Lin Che hit her. "What lonely person? We're still here for you." But there's no man to dote on me. Much less a man like Gu Jingze." Mu Feiren looked at Lin Che. "I really envy you so much for finding a man who's willing to dote on you and is sincere towards you. Look at me on the other hand. No matter how grand I seem on the outside, even to the point of being labeled the queen of the industry, I'm the only one who knows how much of a failure I am." Lin Che clasped her hands. "You only failed in choosing the right man. But you're the most successful in other aspects. So many people look up to you, even me. You have such a good daughter and such good friends as well. In what way are you a failure?" Mu Feiren had a forlorn expression on her face. Despite this, she nevertheless smiled thereafter. "That's right. I can't let that jerk ruin everything I have." Mu Feiren went in together with Lin Che. "Who was that man earlier?" Mu Feiren asked. Lin Che said, "His name is Mo Jinyan, but his alias is Black Hawk. He's a very complicated person. I heard that he had a very shady background in the past. He has started to get involved in the commercial market." "Oh, I see." Mu Feiren looked down in deep thought. She looked slightly hesitant. It seemed that it probably was not him but merely someone slightly similar. Mu Feiren did not want to think about what happened that night at all. Her memories of that man were very hazy as well. That night, Gu Jingze came to her room once again. Gu Jingze looked slightly tired when he came in. The moment he stepped in, he started taking off his clothes. Lin Che looked at him in disbelief. "How did you get the keys to my room?" Gu Jingze replied, "The maids helped me open the door." "What? As husband and wife, of course, we should sleep together. So when I asked them for it, they gave me the keys. Come on, let's go to sleep. It's very late. Get lost. Get out and sleep somewhere else. There are so many rooms outside." "No way. Right now, Mu Feiren and her daughter are living here, so it's more appropriate for me to stay with you. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good for Mu Feiren's reputation either if I lived under the same roof with a stranger like her." "Get lost. Stop making excuses." Lin Che pointed to the door and said. However, she felt Gu Jingze suddenly charge towards her and embrace her. He refused to let go and did not allow her to move. With his arms wrapped around her body, he said, all right. Stop moving. There's something that I still have to tell you." Lin Che stopped moving and felt his lips at her ear. "What?" "Come, let's talk about it slowly." He pulled her so that they were both lying down and covered both of them with the blanket. Then, he proceeded to put his arm around her neck and said, "I'll take you to our company banquet tomorrow. I'll come to pick you up tomorrow morning." "What? Your company banquet? Why must I go?" "I'm taking Xinian there to meet a few of our shareholders. I'll get someone to show him the ropes." "What?" Lin Che opened her mouth in shock. No way. Why do you have to do that? He's still so young. Why does he have to look around the company? Gu Jingze replied, since he has already learned some principles, it's good for him to know what our company does at the moment since it's possible for him to develop a career in this field in the future. Letting people at the company meet him would be good for his future as well. But he has so much more potential than you think. He resembles me in this aspect. When I was his age, I started to interact with the company shareholders and slowly came to understand the family business as well. This will be so much better than suddenly having to take over the company. Lin Che thought about it and worried that Xinian would be stressed. However, Lin Che had no choice but to agree since Gu Jingze had said that he would be going there only to familiarize himself with the shareholders. She felt that she had to go with them to take a look and assess what exactly would be best for the child to do. Although Nianian was a member of the Gu family and it would probably be impossible for her to contain his brilliance in the future, he was her child after all. If anyone wanted to do something to harm him, she would definitely prevent it. The next day. In the morning, Yun Kuoshan immediately stopped Yun Luo from leaving the house. Luo, you have to attend the shareholders meeting at Gu Industries today. Ah, why? According to the rumors, Gu Jingze is bringing Lin Che to the shareholders meeting. Humph. The Gu family is not aware of what happened between Lin Che and Gu Jingze. They haven't met Lin Che either. Go arrange to attend the meeting together with the mistress of the Gu family. Humph. I'll see how Lin Che faces the members of the Gu family when she can't hide any longer. Yun Luo asked, I don't think that's a good idea, wouldn't Jingze be angry? Yun Kuoshan said, take the mistress of the Gu family there. What's there to be angry about? Just say that she's going with you for fun. Don't you know how to lie? You're in a difficult spot now. Do you want Lin Che to snatch Gu Jingze away from you again? In that case, wouldn't everything you've done thus far be for naught? Yun Luo listened to her father's words and slowly clasped her hands together. For Gu Jingze's sake. Mu Wanqing did not leave for a long time. She looked at Yun Luo and sighed, I don't know whether it's my bones that are ailing now. I can't be bothered to move at all. Yun Luo smiled. No way, Auntie, I can't tell your age from your face at all. You're exactly the same now as you were the first time I met you. Mu Wanqing smiled and said, what do I do about my age? I can't continue any longer. But the weather looks good today. I should go out for a walk. Mu Wanqing still found Yun Luo quite likable. Her appearance evoked some sympathy. From a young age, she had a heart disease and was frail. It seemed like she could not do anything on her own. However, it was precisely this quality that Mu Wanqing liked. She felt that an honest and obedient person like Yun Luo was better than some other scheming person. Very soon after. Upon stepping outside, Yun Luo said, Auntie, I heard that there's a shareholders meeting for Gu Industries today. Mu Wanqing said, yes. They will gather a few times each year for a meeting. Thereafter, they will discuss some matters over a meal. I heard it from my father. He's going today as well. Why don't we go over and take a look too? Are you interested in this? I'm a little interested. I don't want to stay at home all the time because of my illness. I want a chance to go out and work too. Chapter 778, Proof of that child's status. Mu Wanqing patted her hand. Look at you, you poor thing. You'll definitely have an opportunity in the future, once your illness is cured. Doesn't Jingze have some people helping you research? There's definitely hope for the future. Hearing this, Yun Luo nodded her head vigorously as well. Mu Wanqing pulled her along and said, all right then. We'll go and take a look. Meanwhile, at the shareholders meeting. When Gu Jingze was in a meeting, he was completely serious. It was only when the meeting ended that everyone heaved a sigh of relief and followed Gu Jingze out of the room. President Gu, all of the shareholders attended the meeting this time. It's truly heartwarming. Gu Jingze had recently taken over the board of directors in all aspects and everyone had become more respectful towards him. They knew that he had succeeded his grandfather as the head of the family, so it seemed as if they were about to make sacrificial offerings to him. Each of them was so eager to claim connections with him. Gu Jingze had already settled Lin Che and Gu Xinian into his office and was going to go and call them sometime later. However, just then, the secretary suddenly walked towards him and said, "Sir, ma'am came to visit you. She asked if your meeting has already ended." The dinner banquet began once the meeting ended. Everyone was chatting about their daily lives and having separate conversations about several topics that were inappropriate for the meeting. Upon hearing that his mother was here, Gu Jingze frowned. Although it was in itself normal for a member of the Gu family to attend the shareholders' meeting, Gu Jingze was a little skeptical at Mu Wanqing's sudden arrival right now, as he knew that she never liked leaving the house. "Please come in," Gu Jingze said. Mu Wanqing proceeded to walk in. She saw Gu Jingze, smiled and asked, "How are things? Has the meeting ended? I don't know if it's a good idea for me to come so abruptly, but I came here to take a look since I saw that the weather today was not bad and everyone was here too." Gu Jingze walked towards his mother and put an arm around her shoulders. For the past few years, the Gu family had been in a constant state of flux. As a result, Mu Wanqing had suffered immensely. In the chaos, Gu Jingze was able to discern who exactly was genuinely on his side and who was only around to watch the fun. As for Mu Wanqing, she was supportive of her son no matter what. Naturally, Gu Jingze had gotten closer to her because of this as well. When he heard Mu Wanqing's words, he said calmly, "The meeting already ended. It's not rude of you to come here out of the blue." "Oh, Yun Luo is here too. Initially, we wanted to go out and look around, but we remembered that the shareholders' meeting was today." "Oh, where is she?" Gu Jingze looked around and did not see any trace of Yun Luo. Mu Wanqing said, "She went to look for her father since she knows that he's here today too." Everyone looked at Mu Wanqing. This lady did not appear often, but all of them knew her. They quickly came over to greet her when they saw that she had arrived. When Gu Jingze had been demoted and the Gu family had been embroiled in internal conflict, Mu Wanqing had resolutely stood on Gu Jingze's side. Later events proved that Gu Jingze was the victor. As a result, those who had chosen the wrong side did not dare to make a sound right now. Everyone once again treated Mu Wanqing with even more respect as well. Therefore, a significant number of people were eager to flatter her too. Someone looked at Mu Wanqing and asked, "Did you come out to go shopping with Miss Yun?" Mu Wanqing replied, "Yes. I just had nothing better to do. It's been hard on all of you. Women like us are simply eating for free. We can't help out with anything." "No way. Peace across the country is achieved by regulating the family and ruling the state. President Gu is able to lead us in facing challenges at work only because you are commanding the family affairs. Miss Yun is like you. She's from a wealthy family and is on such good terms with you. All of this is President Gu's fortune." The way he spoke made it sound as if Yun Luo and Gu Jingze were in some relationship. Mu Wanqing froze and immediately looked at Gu Jingze in worry. Sure enough, Gu Jingze had already cast a dark gaze at the man. His sudden and sharp gaze was like light reflected off a knife and made the man's heart quake. The shareholder immediately shut his mouth, not knowing what he had said wrong. Before this, everyone had heard the rumors that Gu Jingze and the Yun family shared a very close relationship and that they were probably going to be joined by marriage. Regardless of whether Gu Jingze was married, everyone felt that ultimately, this meant nothing to the Gu family. He had a wife who he could simply divorce. If the Gu family wanted to do something, they would definitely not have any difficulties in that aspect. But he did not expect his attempt at flattery to fall flat right now when Gu Jingze suddenly said, "I invited everyone here this time because there's someone I would like to introduce all of you to." "Oh, who?" Everyone looked at him in unison. They felt that the person whom Gu Jingze wanted to introduce to them must be someone prominent. Could it be that Gu Industries had solicited some brilliant top executive? However, Gu Jingze's subsequent words shocked everyone present. "I want to introduce my son to everyone. I hope that everyone will help to teach and guide him regarding company affairs in the future." Everyone thought that they had heard him wrong. Gu Jingze's son. It seemed that no one knew that Gu Jingze actually had a son. The news had been concealed too well. As a result, everyone froze in shock upon hearing the news out of the blue. "President Gu, when did luck descend upon you and give you a son?" "We didn't know about it at all," someone asked with a stuttering voice. Gu Jingze smiled faintly. Before this, he was living abroad. I just brought him back. Give me a moment. You will understand once I bring him over here. Although he's only 3 years old, it's always good to start educating a child early on. I hope that everyone can help him out. Only 3 years old. Alright then. It was quite logical to send a child of the Gu family abroad before bringing him back again once it was safe to do so, but the child had been hidden away way too well. He was about to introduce his son to everyone right now and was even asking them to help guide him. The child was only 3 years old, but had he already taken a liking to him and was hoping that he would make something of himself in Gu Industries. By saying this openly in front of so many people, he was directly confirming his child's status. Everyone could not help but get into an uproar. Furthermore, someone immediately expressed his loyalty. No need to stand on ceremony. It's something that we should do. At 3 years old, he's so sensible that you can bring him here to learn from us. It's clear that the apple didn't fall far from the tree. He will definitely be able to forge a successful career for himself in the future. We truly look forward to meeting him. Seeing that someone had already expressed his loyalty, everyone immediately followed suit, one after another, not willing to be left behind. It was obvious that a child whom Gu Jingze had recognized would definitely have great status in the future. If they did not express their loyalty right now, when else would they do it? However, at the side, Mu Wanqing could no longer control her emotions. She pulled Gu Jingze to her in one swift motion, her agitation obvious on her face. Are you saying that the child is back? You've already brought him back here. Gu Jingze looked at Mu Wanqing's expression, held her hands, and said, that's right. He's here now. I'll take you to see him right now. How could you keep this from me until now? You didn't bring him to me immediately upon flying him back here. My grandson. Alright, don't be so agitated. You're carrying Jingyan's child all the time. Don't tell me you haven't had enough. Gu Jingyan asked teasingly. Chapter 779. Mu Wanqing looked at her full of guilt. Mu Wanqing said, I look after that child all the time, but not once have I seen yours. That's why I'm even more agitated. It's all your fault. You didn't let me meet him, nor did you let me visit him. I understand that you don't want me to ruin your plans, but I can't believe that you're still not letting me meet him now that he's already back. Gu Jingze held Mu Wanqing back to prevent her from springing up. Then, he sighed and said, Mother. You'll meet him later. Don't be anxious. Mu Wanqing had long been unable to control her excitement and told him to hurry. Lin Che and Gu Xinian were waiting in the office. Gu Xinian was playing on the computer. Lin Che was standing and looking around Gu Jingze's office. She was looking at the things inside and flipping through documents as she wished. She could not understand any of the documents that she had flipped open. She merely skimmed through them and did not want to continue reading them. However, just then, some sounds traveled in from outside. Lin Che could hear Qin Hao's voice. Thinking that Gu Jingze had arrived, she immediately opened the door to the office. Secretary Qin, is it Gu Jingze? However, she looked up only to meet Yun Luo's gaze. Upon seeing Lin Che, Yun Luo clearly froze as well. Qin Hao looked at them and thought, oh no, these two are finally going to have a showdown here today. No one on earth was unaware of Yun Luo's feelings for President Gu. However, there were all sorts of rumors outside. Although Qin Hao had his suspicions before, he knew the moment Lin Che returned that there was no hope for Yun Luo. Thus, Qin Hao glanced at them and quickly went to Lin Che's side. He bowed his head respectfully and said, Madam, Miss Yun just came by to take a look. Lin Che let out a sound of affirmation and nodded as a show of understanding. She cast her gaze on Yun Luo and looked at this fragile-looking young miss of the Yun family. Then, she smiled and greeted her first. Nice to meet you, Miss Yun. Yun Luo's heart stuttered. Her mood took a complete downturn when she saw Lin Che walk out of Gu Jingze's office. However, she was and remained Gu Jingze's wife now. It was perhaps because of this fact that Qin Hao let Lin Che come in. After all, she was the wife of his boss in name. If she said that she wanted to enter the office, of course, he did not dare to disobey. Yun Luo asked, what? Was Miss Lin in Jingze's office earlier? Lin Che replied, that's right. Yun Luo looked at Qin Hao. Does your boss know about this? Naturally, Qin Hao understood what Yun Luo meant. Gu Jingze's office had always been strictly off limits. Ordinary people were not allowed in. The alarms would go off if someone entered. Yun Luo had come here before and had set off the alarm. Qin Hao broke into a smile. Of course, he stood unwaveringly on Lin Che's side right now. Miss Yun, about that, Madam is here because Sir personally let her in. Yun Luo's face darkened. Lin Che raised her head slightly to look at Yun Luo and asked, why? Is there a problem? Yun Luo quickly concealed the embarrassment on her face and said, no. I was just confused. This place has never been open to random people because the confidential information inside implicates the company's operations after all. If anything happens, Gu Jingze may have to spend even more time settling the matters, so I was just asking about it. Lin Che looked at Yun Luo, walked towards her, and said, I really didn't know that that was the case. When Gu Jingze let me in, he didn't mention any confidential information at all. Hearing this from beside them, Qin Hao quickly smiled and replied, of course, of course. There's no such thing as confidential information between Sir and Madam. Sir is definitely honest in front of you. You can look at anything you want to. Yun Luo looked at Qin Hao in shock. This Qin Hao, he was so eagerly attentive to the point that it seemed like he was about to kneel for her. Yun Luo had always treated Qin Hao with immense respect out of the knowledge that Qin Hao had been working for Gu Jingze for more than 10 years and had always been his personal assistant. Because of this, Qin Hao had a great reputation elsewhere. Everyone treated him with respect upon seeing him. But now, he was actually flattering Lin Che and following her around like a pug. Was Lin Che that terrifying? Yun Luo remembered what her father had previously told her. Lin Che did not come from a good background but was able to capture Gu Jingze's heart and even seduce Gu Jingze into having a child with her. This woman was definitely not simple. When she saw that even Qin Hao treated her with such respect now, Yun Luo felt even more strongly that Lin Che had some tricks up her sleeve. Yun Luo's tone softened. You fine, I was just a little worried. I hope that my worries are unfounded too. What happened here? Just then, they heard Gu Jingze's voice from behind them. Yun Luo quickly turned her head around. She looked at Gu Jingze and hastily said, Jingze, what happened was that she went into your office. I was worried that there was something inside that she should not mess up, so I just reminded her. However, Gu Jingze merely glanced at Yun Luo coolly. He evaded the hand that she had stretched out and said to her, what confidential information? 3 words from him made Yun Luo momentarily speechless. Just then, Yun Luo saw Mu Wanqing behind him and immediately reacted. She quickly went up to her. Auntie, you're here. However, Mu Wanqing did not look at her at all. She merely stared straight at Lin Che standing at the back. Even her eyes were moist with tears. Lin Che gazed at Mu Wanqing. They had not met for a long time. She immediately saw Mu Wanqing's reddish eyes and thought about what had happened in the past few years. It unexpectedly made her heart ache as well. Mother, she called out and instinctively took a step forward. Mu Wanqing had already walked straight towards her. She pulled Lin Che to her in one swift motion and her tears proceeded to fall. Child, you've suffered. It was my fault. I couldn't protect you. Seriously, she genuinely felt immensely guilty at the fact that she had not been able to do anything back then. She was the one who had brought Lin Che to the Gu family and made Gu Jingze marry her. However, she was unable to protect her happiness to the end. Lin Che's tears also fell upon seeing her this way. Mother, of course, I know that it's not your fault. Furthermore, I'm completely fine. I came back safely. It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back. Let me look at you. Oh no, seriously, you've lost weight again. Why didn't you look after yourself properly while you were away? Now that I'm seeing this, my heart really aches. Lin Che smiled. After giving birth, I had to put in the effort to slim down. Isn't this great? My figure is so good. Good lord, you're good either way. You didn't have to slim down at all. Mu Wanqing thought of the child and hastily took out a handkerchief to wipe her tears. Look at me, I cried even though you're back. If the child sees it, he will probably laugh at us adults. Where is the child? I wanted to see him even in my dreams. My wish for you to return soon and unite as a family has finally come true today. Gu Jingze said, Mother, Nianian is inside. Lin Che nodded thereafter. Gu Jingze turned around and looked at Yun Luo behind him. Chapter 780. She was the only one in his eyes. She stood there frozen. She looked on as Mu Wanqing and Lin Che reunited after a long time. The scene was heartwarming and heart-wrenching at the same time. Mu Wanqing had actually even cried. Yun Luo twitched. She thought of how her father had even thought that there would be a huge uproar in the Gu family when they found out that Lin Che had returned and how he had wanted to borrow Mu Wanqing's hands to punish Lin Che. But he had not expected. She thought that her relationship with Mu Wanqing was already great and that Mu Wanqing favored her, but she did not expect Mu Wanqing to be even closer to Lin Che as she seemed to be now. The great mistress of the Gu family had actually shed tears for Lin Che. This was so unthinkable. Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che. He walked towards her and held her by the shoulders. Then, he wrapped his arm around her waist and said gently to her, "It's mother's first time meeting her grandson. Don't be shocked later on." "Alright, I'll just give myself an immunity shot in advance," Lin Che said and shrugged. She glanced askance at Yun Luo behind her and smiled faintly. She did not forget to turn around to look at Yun Luo before saying in a light tone, "Miss Yun. Excuse us. Mother and I have not met for a very long time, so we were a bit emotional. We're usually not like this." Of course, Yun Luo could detect the light sarcasm in Lin Che's words. She smiled awkwardly, but her eyes were already fixed on Gu Jingze's hands. If she remembered correctly, Gu Jingze had really never allowed her to touch any part of his body. He always seemed to keep a good distance from her and she did not dare to approach him. However, he was standing so close to Lin Che right now. He was touching her shoulders and had his arms wrapped around her. Yun Luo suddenly lost all of her confidence. She felt that what everyone had said before about Gu Jingze treating her very well was actually not true. It was only because Gu Jingze treated everyone else too shoddily. As a result, everyone found it amazing when he treated her even slightly better. However, now that she saw that Gu Jingze could actually treat a woman so gently, she really felt as if her heart was blocked up. It felt terrible. Gu Jingze turned his head and glanced coldly at Yun Luo. "Yun Luo, I have some matters to settle. Do as you please." "Oh, okay, it's fine. You don't have to bother about me." Yun Luo had no choice but to say this nonchalantly. She glanced at Qin Hao, who walked past her with his head high and his chest out. Now that Lin Che had returned, it seemed that his attitude towards her had changed abruptly. It was as if he could not be bothered with her at all. Even the little respect he had shown her previously had now vanished. When Mu Wanqing entered the room and saw Gu Xinian, she truly felt that he was impossibly adorable. "Nianian, I'm your grandmother." She walked over to him and looked at him carefully. She wanted to touch him but was afraid of scaring the child as well. Gu Xinian looked at Mu Wanqing. "Hello, grandmother." "Yes, good, good, come over and let me look at you." She smiled and called Nianian over. She genuinely did not dare to be too enthusiastic and could only suppress her love for him. When Gu Xinian came to her, Mu Wanqing crouched down and looked at him. She really felt that he was too beautiful. She hugged Gu Xinian, smiled, and said, "Nianian is so obedient. You look so much like your mother. Truly, you're so beautiful." Gu Jingze said, "Mother. Take a good look, he obviously looks like me." Mu Wanqing turned to look at Gu Jingze. "He doesn't wear that dirty look you wear all the time. I think he's much better looking. Come, Nianian, I didn't prepare a present for you either. I'll prepare presents for you when you come to our house in a few days." While looking at them, Lin Che thought of the numerous presents that Mu Wanqing had bought for her back then. Immediately, she felt that the presents would surprise them again. However, Gu Jingze held her back and stopped her. He smiled at her and shook his head. Lin Che understood that he was telling her not to interfere. Mu Wanqing could give him whatever she wanted to. Lin Che had no choice but to shake her head in disbelief. Mu Wanqing said, "I'll watch over Xinian later. You two can go ahead and have fun. No need to look after him." "Mother, I still want to take Xinian to meet some of our shareholders in a while," Gu Xinian said. Mu Wanqing frowned and looked at him. But after thinking about it, she thought that this was beneficial for the child as well. Thus, she merely said, "In that case, let me take Nianian around first." Knowing that Mu Wanqing wanted to spend some time with the child, Lin Che nodded her head first. Seeing that Lin Che had nodded her head, Gu Jingze could only agree reluctantly. All right then, mother, I'll give you half an hour. Mu Wanqing looked at Gu Jingze. She knew that he had only agreed because Lin Che also agreed. She scoffed and said, you agree with whatever Lin Che says but you always rebut whatever I say. It's true that you treat your wife and your mother differently. Lin Che had not noticed this issue yet. When she heard Mu Wanqing tease them, her embarrassment immediately showed on her face. She glanced at Gu Jingze. When she saw him turn his head towards her, she hastily evaded his gaze deliberately. The corners of Gu Jingze's lips turned upwards. His pretty lashes trembled slightly as he looked at Mu Wanqing and said, anyway, I'll come to pick him up in half an hour. Thereafter, he pulled Lin Che by the hand. Let's go. Lin Che could only leave with Gu Xinian. After she saw the door close behind her, she looked at Gu Jingze and said, mother even wants to give Xinian some presents. Xinian is still young and he doesn't need anything at all either. It doesn't matter how many things she gives him. But you actually agreed to it. Gu Jingze said, Xinian won't have any use for it now but you'll be in charge of everything on his behalf. It's fine, mother has a lot of money stashed away. She can give us whatever she wants to. If the same words were used for an ordinary family, he would have definitely been accused of being a terrible unfilial son who was coveting his mother's money. However, the Gu family had so much material wealth. As they were so wealthy, his words sounded like a compliment and a joke instead. No one felt that he was being unfilial. After all, his words were right. Mu Wanqing was indeed very wealthy. A small present from her out of her vast assets was a hair off of a bull's back. While chatting, Gu Jingze led her to a seat in the cafeteria. The cafeteria of Gu Industries was incomparable to the cafeterias of other companies. The interior of the cafeteria was luxurious and the design was in American style. It was slightly luxurious, with golden strokes and real wooden panels. It was very tasteful. It was just like an extravagant ballroom of a hotel. Entering it felt like entering a ball. The shareholders were still chatting amongst themselves when they saw the huge doors open and Gu Jingze walk in. They immediately stopped chattering and started to surround Gu Jingze. However, just then, everyone was shocked to see a woman walking beside Gu Jingze. It was Lin Che. Everyone immediately reacted. One of them was so quick to react that he had already raised his glass to say, what a rare occurrence for President Gu to bring Madame Gu along. Seeing this, everyone followed suit one after another as well. President Gu and Madame Gu are truly a match made in heaven. How worthy of envy. Gu Jingze stretched his arm out and hooked it through Lin Che's, smiling faintly. He tilted his head to look at her. Everyone could tell that Gu Jingze's typically cold gaze only gave off a gentle glint when he was looking at Lin Che. Although his gaze was still as chilly as moonlight, his eyes were much more gentle than they usually were. This was a gaze that only Lin Che enjoyed.